It's going to be part 2, section 2 of the questions in the civics for the civics exam, which is American history. In this, there are again going to be 3 sections, but in this video, we are mainly going to be talking about American history in general, so that it will help you with the questions in these sections. Okay, these are just the 3 sections. So some of the things that you have to understand to be able to build it up to what happened. So initially, British colonists were basically, there were a few people in Britain that were very rebellious about being able to practice a certain type of Christianity in the Great Britain at the time. However, the government did not allow and wanted to get rid of that rebellious group of people. And in order to do so, they basically allotted them a land in the United States and told them to move to the United States and do whatever they want to and practice whatever religion and however they want to. But they can't do that in the Great Britain. So these people now, they're going to be called as colonists. So when the colonists came to, so they basically came from Europe, and when they came to US, they were pretty much on their own, although the Great Britain, on paper, Great Britain was their government that was taking care of them, and was putting taxes on them and just all of that stuff. However, in reality, they were paying all those taxes, but they weren't being provided the supervision how they expected a government to provide them. Which is why eventually these colonists were fed up of all of these taxes. Therefore, there comes this phrase, taxation without representation. They argued that we want to set free from the British rule because we are only paying taxes, we're not getting any representation in the parliament, and we are pretty much on our own. We aren't getting as much help as we should, considering that how much taxes we're paying. So that's when the colonists fought the British, and the reason were the heavy taxes. Okay, so initially colonists came to US for freedom. However, they fought the British because of the heavy taxes. Two very important things to remember and to have them separate. Okay, so some of the important things that happened in 1800s. Colonists wrote their constitution and they had Declaration of Independence, just dates that will come up later in the questions. Okay, and then in Civil War, so in 1800s there was also Civil War. So what was Civil War all about if you know nothing? So initially Africans were brought to US as slaves, and they were brought here and made to work mainly at farms and even at houses, and they weren't given equal rights as that of other civilians. So Africans were considered slave. So initially slavery was in all 13 states. However, over time, it was more predominantly in the southern states, and it was somewhat better in the northern states where there wasn't as much strictly followed, or the rules were a little more, they were a little better. However, over time, there was a divide between the North and the South, where the North argued against and abolishing slavery, getting rid of slavery, whereas the South wanted to keep it because they had more farms in that area, which led to the Civil War. And it was between the North and the South, and the reason the war was to abolish slavery. So eventually, slavery was abolished in 1800s, and yeah, so the important part is that why did the Civil War happen? Because of slavery. When did it happen? In the 1800s. And um, what was Civil War trying to do or accomplish? Um, it was trying to abolish slavery. Okay. Mm. And then in 1900s, the main things that you will be dealing with is going to be World War One. So they're mainly going to ask you what are some of the wars that happened in 1900. So one of them is World War One, the other is World War Two. Then you have to know the name of the president. So in World War One, Wilson was the president, and then World War Two was Roosevelt. And then another question is what companies did the U.S. fight against in World War Two? That's going to be Japan, Germany, Italy. And then after, so World War One happened in 1918. World War Two in 1947. You don't have to know these years. And then there was Cold War, which happened in 1970s or afterwards, around that time. And so one of the questions that will come up about the Cold War is going to be why did it happen? So the reason is going to be communism. Pretty much, yes. Okay, so that was a brief mini history lesson. Um, thank you for watching.